Hi guys! Today I want to make a video showing you how to use multiple elastics to put extra notebooks inside your Midori. So in my Midori at the moment I have two notebooks, but I have an extra section. And many people who have Midoris want 3 or possibly more notebooks. So this is some of the tricks that people use to get that extra notebook in their Midori. Although there are other ways of doing it, I might miss one, but hopefully I'll cover a few to get you going with the putting an extra notebook in. But if you have any more ideas, or if you've notice one that I've forgotten, pop it in the comments, and then hopefully people will be able to use this as a resource for putting an extra notebook in their Midori. So as you can see, this Midori here, I have 2 notebooks, and that's because when you first get a Midori, when it is brand new, you have 2 elastics inside. They are fixed at the top and the bottom, and it's actually one long elastic which goes from the top down through the hole at the bottom, back up through a hole at the top, and fixed by this tin clasp. So it's one long elastic, but you've got one longer elastic which is fitted through the hole at the top and the hole at the bottom, and then you've got the shorter elastic which is fitted through the hole that is further away from the bottom and further away from the top, and you can see where it comes out on this side here. And so it is quite easy to fit 2 notebooks in here. It's even easier to fit 1 notebook in here. The only thing is with the shorter elastic is that you will have to stretch it so that it will fit over the cover of your notebook, because the notebook cover is longer than this elastic is, but then it will stretch because it is elastic. So you can fit 2 notebooks in there easily by putting 1 on each elastic, but many people do want to put 3 notebooks in there. So I'll show you a few ways of doing that. So the first thing you need is an extra elastic, or you can use an elastic band, a normal rubber band, although over time they may perish, and that has happened to me, but then it was quite an old elastic band. Or you could use one of the Midori elastic bands, which they do sell, and they sell them in brown and in black to match the colour of your Midori. But I think I'm right in saying that every new Midori does come with an extra elastic, which, so you have the elastics inside the Midori, then you have the elastic that is for the closure, and this is a different elastic. This one's green, but the one you get with the closure for the closure for the actual Midori, I think you get the brown one, and then you get an orange elastic which should be on the packaging, or possibly in a little baggie inside the packaging. I'm not 100% sure. I have only ever had 1 Midori in its packaging, because I did get this one from a swap, and to be honest, I didn't really notice whether there was an extra elastic. I have had elastic separate. This is coloured elastic, so I've just used this. I've cut it to the same length as the elastic that comes with the Midori for the closure, and so I've used this, but I think I am right in saying that you do get a spare elastic. So you can use the spare elastic for that, and this is perfect. So what you'd want to do is just to tie the elastic just as long as possible, so the knot is as close to the ends of the elastic as possible, so that it's long enough. Although it will stretch, obviously, you do want to make sure it is long enough, so you just pop a couple of knots in there, make sure it's tight enough, because it will be stretched quite a lot. You want to make sure the knot is tight enough. I'm not sure what this knot is called. I'm sure there's a precise name for it, but I don't know what it is. Okay, and then although that does look like it won't stretch very far, it actually will. And you can always make it a bit longer if necessary, because there is quite a lot of elastic left. And make sure you don't trim it, because you can always make the whole the knot to make it smaller, but if you cut it then you will have made it too short, I think. Okay, so you've got your 3 notebooks, and what you need to do is to find the middle of the 2 notebooks. Let's say you've got notebook 1, notebook 2 and notebook 3. So you lay them down in the order that you want them. That's number 1, that's number 2 and that's number 3. Leave number 2 for the moment. You get number 1 and number 3. And imagine you're laying them spine to spine. You get your elastic and you put it around and over half of number 1. You can actually pop the knot at the bottom, that might be easier. That's how I do it. It's quite hard to pull actually. I have tightened this a bit too much. So you pop it through at the middle point so that it sits over the spine like that. And then you get notebook 3. You make sure it's the right way up and you pop it through the elastic like this. So they are sitting spine to spine. Okay, and then you can do this a couple of ways. You can either pass the notebooks under the elastics, like so, and then you have the elastics sitting over the elastic that you have just added, or, and this is, oh, and then you can put the third, or rather the second notebook through there, or this is a better way that I have experienced. I got this from Romany, sorry, I don't know exactly how to pronounce your name, where you have your elastics like this. So you make a gap, you pull it and you make a gap and you pull the 2 Midori elastics up through, and then you put your second notebook under and through, and I will show you why in a second. And then you give it a wiggle and you push it under so that it sits under the extra elastic on the top and the bottom. And the reason for this is because they now sit with the spines exactly together. If you had it the first way I showed you, I'm just going to pull the knot here so that it sits at the bottom there. If you had it the first way that I showed you, when you are opening and closing your Midori, the middle notebook will come slightly pulled up like this, and so they won't sit flush. But, and now this is tricky with this Midori because it has quite a narrow spine, but when you do put extra notebooks in it, the spine should become softer and more supple so that it will fit the width of the spines. It should sit snugly like that, and so they're all about the same width. Now, what you may experience with this is that when you are kind of moving it around, they do move a bit, and that is one bad thing about this way of doing it, because this is effectively, these two notebooks are effectively sitting over this one and can come off quite easily if you're not careful. Although I haven't experienced that in my own Midori, that is the way I used to do it in here. That is something that I've seen happen, and that is something that can happen if you are putting 4 notebooks in it. So you can, because you do have the 2 elastics in the middle, do it with this technique where you've got the middle elastic being pulled up through the gap of these 2. Put an extra notebook on one of these elastics. So I'll give you a quick demonstration. Now I'm sorry if I'm doing this upside down on the camera, but I'm not showing you any writing or anything, so it shouldn't be too difficult to for you to visualize what I'm doing, because I guess it doesn't matter if I'm doing it upside down or the right way round. Okay, so I've got one notebook there, and then I've got an extra elastic, and I can pop my 4th notebook, or in this case the 3rd, the correct way up, and then I push them underneath the elastic that I've added. But because this spine is quite not supple enough, they won't sit properly under yet. I'd have to do some wriggling, but if I get it all sitting in right, as you can see, I now have 4 notebooks in here, but this extra elastic is stretched quite far over the spines of the 2 middle ones, and so it is getting a bit more difficult for the elastic to hold the 4 up, because effectively, sorry, I just dropped a little brad there, effectively the elastic that is holding the 2 outside notebooks in is being stretched quite far, because it's being stretched over the 2 middle ones as well. So I think over time you might find that well, I've just shaken it to see what would happen. The 2 middle notebooks have actually come out further than I would want them to, and it's not sitting right, so you'd have to have a play around with that. In my Midori here, I have tried all of these methods that I'm showing you today, and I have had to use a different method with the setup I've currently got, because you do have to experiment, you do have to play around. You could pop it, you know, all in one structure and, you know, carry it around with you for a while, and if it doesn't work, then try another structure, or, you know, just play around with it and see if it's going to work. So we'll take the elastics and the notebooks out, and the next way to do it is if you have got an extra insert, so you a pocket type of insert. This is a file folder. You might have one of the Midori craft folders, you might have one of the Ziploc pockets, or the credit card pockets, or something else, maybe something you've made. So if you have it under the elastics, I'm just trying to do it without creasing the cardboard too much. This one's made by Ray Blake. I got it in Midori I bought. Now, one thing you have to make sure if you have an insert like this without the notebook sitting on it yet, is that the elastic may pull at the top and the bottom, and it may crease the insert, or it may actually split the insert. I've had a couple of the plastic inserts which have split because the elastic is pulling on it so much, but I've just repaired them with some wide tape like this. So what you can do with this is just to put the elastics on normally, but what you can also do, this may have been better to show you with the plastic inserts, but I don't want to take the setup of my Midori apart, is what you can do is put the extra elastic over the insert like this and use that as an extra elastic. And that means that you haven't got the problem which you had when you had the extra elastic being put over the other the other notebooks, because with that one you had the possibility that it would fall out, but with putting it over here, and when this insert is under these elastics, is if this doesn't come out, the elastic won't come out, and this one will only come out if you really pull at it, or if it tears. In the case of this sort of cardboard, it might tear, but in the case of the plastic inserts, it won't tear. So that is a good way of doing it, is having the insert with the elastic around it, and then if that one's underneath, you can then have the one notebook on this one notebook on this one, and one notebook on the extra one which is sitting over the insert. And if you don't have an insert, you could always make one yourself. You can make one out of cardboard, or you could just make yourself a craft file, or you could maybe make one out of acetate, or something you can recycle from around your home. You may be able to make one out of fabric, I'm not quite sure, but you don't even have to make a full size one. You can just make something that sits underneath the elastics with a fold in the middle so it can be folded up, and then you can have the elastics going over it. But you don't have to stop at one, then you can have 2 elastics on it, or even 3. The issue with having more than 3 elastics is that the width of the spine to accommodate those elastics, it does need to be supple enough, and it needs to be wide enough. I have found with my Midori that if I have anything more than, as you can see, I've got a really fat insert and I've got a normal insert, but if I had an extra insert here, it would start to struggle. If I had 4 inserts, just for the normal width, then it would, the middle, one of the 2 middle ones would start to come out because it's being so squeezed by the spine not being supple enough. Whereas with my Midori, this is my first Midori made by Ray Blake, because it's a really supple, lovely leather. The spine is much more malleable, much more supple, and it will mould around the spines much easier, and so it would be easier to fit 4 notebooks in there. And with my other Midori here, I did ask Ray to make it with slightly different elastic configuration, and he said, well, therefore you'd be able to fit 6 inserts in it using the techniques that I've showed you. So he made it wider, and because it's such a supple leather, this could fit 6 inserts, because you can see how wide the spine can go. It could really fit around a lot of inserts. So you may find, if you do want to put 4 inserts in it, that you may have to make the leather more supple. I'm not suggesting any drastic techniques like using heat or using water or anything, but just over time the leather will become more supple, but it may not be able to fit more than 3 in it. So I've showed you the over the insert technique, I've showed you the under the spine to spine technique. I'm just trying to think if there are any more techniques which I need to show you. Oh yes, there is quite a simple way of putting them in. So imagine you've got the first insert, you've got the second insert, you can then use your elastic and you can put it over one of your half of one of your notebooks, whether it's at the front or whether it's at the back, to have it sitting like this, so that you have now 2 elastics on the same one, and have them sitting spine to spine. And this is how I had it at first, when I first set up my Midori. But then what happens is that this one, like with the first one where it's just fixed on on the notebooks and not behind an insert, it is liable to slip. And also, as the Midori spine moves, this one is more liable to not be aligned with the others. But that is a simple way of attaching them. And now with my Midori, which has the elastics, where instead of with the Midori where the elastics are vertical and sit over each other, this one is horizontal and sit next to each other. I could fit 6 elastics in here. And if you are thinking of making your own Midori, or are going to ask one of the people who do make them to make one with the elastic configuration like this, you can use the elastic techniques I've shown you to put 6 notebooks in there if it's wide enough, by using 2 sets of 3 notebooks inside it. But what you will find, and I haven't set this one up to show you, but you'll just have to take my word for it, is that when you have 2 sets of 3, so you've got here's the central elastics of the going through the holes, you will have them just like 2 sets of 3. And if you were to pull the 2 sets of 3 apart, there will be quite a gap between them, and they can flop about a bit, and you don't want them to be doing that, because they will kind of flop, and it will not be the kind of rigid structure that you really need to have when you're holding your Midori. The spine will start to kind of move about too much, and the notebooks might slip too much if you're trying to lean on one to write on it. The one underneath might slip. So what you might need to do with the 2 sets of 3 is actually I'm just trying to find my extra elastic. Here it is actually take your extra, in this case you'd need 3 extra elastics, is to take the spines of the 2 middle ones here and link them with an extra elastic so that they are connected, so that instead of it being 2 sets of 3, it is now 1 set of 6, if you know what I mean. That's just the way to make the notebooks. I think you can do that with 5 as well. Make the notebooks be held in the notebook inside the leather cover slightly better. So those are, I think they're all the techniques that I've used. If you do have any other techniques, then pop them in the comments, and good luck setting up your Midoris. Thanks for watching. Bye!